All right, so like I mentioned in the previous video, we're going to be doing ID, Investigation Discovery, InDesign. So you're going to open it up, after you install it, and I'm just going to close this out because I don't really care about any of this new business here. And we are going to create a new document. So create new. So we're going to make a magazine, and I'm just going to make one with you. You can probably just follow this and put in your own elements, but or you can just do this and then do your own. It's kind of up to you. Okay, so we're going to use letter because letters, obviously, letter is 8.5 by 11. It's a typical sheet. There is options here for letter, legal, tabloid, letter half. Basically, the way that paper is set up is that, I don't remember what the different things are, but basically, there's different sizes, and each one is if you cut them in half, basically you can fit that like a really big sheet, and then when you cut it a certain way, you can get all the different sizes. But we're going to do letter. There's also print and mobile. The reason why these exist is that it actually is possible to create an HTML, like a website, kind of, through InDesign. But we're not going to do that. So just you can click on print and just choose letter, and then you'll see some options here. Now, these are in points and picas, which is basically, it's a way of measuring that graphic designers do. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to inches because that I understand better. But see, it's 8.5 by 11. So we're going to do just typical normal sheets of paper. We're going to keep the orientation in portrait, not landscape. Pages, we'll start with 1. That's fine. Facing pages, what that means is that let's leave that on and then I'll show you what it means. But basically it just means when it shows you the pages, when it shows 2 on a page, it'll actually have 2 next to each other. So just like when you open up a magazine, right, you would open it up like this. That way you can see both pages. So, sometimes you'll see like a magazine and they'll actually have like a picture of a person or something and it actually goes across both pages. That's the idea, is that can go across both. So they'll show you that. Starting number, obviously 1, columns 1. So you'll see columns and column gutter. So if you're in a magazine, really any kind of printed page that has a lot of text, they'll have columns of text, right? Or columns that the content goes in. Basically what this will do is it'll create rulers for you that you can then snap your text boxes and your images to. And you can choose how many columns. So I'm just going to do 1 because we're just doing a magazine ad, so it's just going to be one big thing. But if I was going to have like 3 columns, I'd put 3 columns in here. And then column gutter is the space between the columns. So that's called the gutter. Okay, so it's just a negative space, just a white open area that you would put in there. So we're just going to go ahead and do that like that. Margins is the space from the basically it's like outside space. We're going to leave that alone. Same thing with bleed and slug. The reason why you need these things here as well, like the bleed and the slug, is basically if you were to, let's say, if you look at a magazine, when you print off on your printer, right? If you do a whole picture, I'm going to do one big picture. You'll notice that when you print it off at home, you always have that white border. It doesn't matter if you make it, you can say, I want to make it as big as it can go. It will not print to the edge. There are printers, I guess, that can do that, but that's like a very specific thing. Most of the time what people do is that they'll print to bleed, and the idea is that they'll print over what it needs to be, and then they cut the paper afterwards, and that's how they print to the edges. So, but we're not doing any of that either, so you can leave all that alone. Margins 0.5, that's fine too, I don't really care. The rest of that's good, so we'll just hit create. And so, you can see InDesign. All right, so this is InDesign. Yeah, so basically, they kind of changed the interface a little bit here, but so what you're going to see is this here. So on the top is like kind of the typical thing. So file, save, export. Packaging is actually going to be the big thing. Where are you, package? Package. Package is going to be a big thing I'm going to explain to you later. It's going to be very important. That's something that's a little bit different. But edit, copy, paste, all that other stuff. Layout, we don't really use too much of this, to be honest. We're going to do, like I said, 2 days of InDesign. But if you decide to take DI3, DI3 is basically mostly Illustrator, but then also InDesign, because that gets more into like graphic design. The DI course is sort of a broad course for basically all VCP students. This is our unified course. So yeah, anyway, so object deals with basically like your vector stuff. Tables, we're not gonna do anything with tables. View isn't that big of a thing. What I would say is that, again, if for some reason this gets all messed up, like you move something out and you're like, oh no, I took this off, I pulled this off, come on. I pulled this off and then I got rid of it and I want it back. If you just go to Window, Workspace, you could just go ahead and reset Essentials and boom, it'll be right back there, okay? So all Adobe products are like that, and I've been noticing more and more other applications are also doing that, which is nice because sometimes you just, I mean, I do it too. Sometimes you just mess it up, okay? There are different workspaces that they have pre-built, just like Photoshop does. So they have Essentials, Essentials Classic, which is actually what I'm kind of used to. So I might go back to that if I have difficulty. The new Essentials is a little bit different. Anyway, oh God, get out of here. I hate this CC libraries thing. I don't really find it very useful. Anyway, so yeah, that's what's up there. You know, nothing too fancy. Over here are our tools. Basically everything inside of InDesign is vector based, so it's more mathematic. You can't really do any raster image editing. You can do little effects, if you will, but we can't like do a heel brush or like use a paintbrush or anything like that. You can just do like really bare bones. Basically the same things you can do on your layer styles. That's pretty much what you can do in InDesign. All right, so it's not for image editing at all. So that's, you'll see the stuff over here. I'm only going to cover real basic stuff to start with, and then afterwards we'll kind of go from there, all right? Now, over here, so these are the tools. I'm not going to bother showing them to you because we'll just use them as we go through instead of having to go through a bunch of it. So we have a properties panel. So this will show basically the properties of our panel. We can change them here. And then we have pages, okay? So if you remember before, I said that this works on, it's good doing multi-pages. Right now you can see we have one page. And if I click this little button, it will make another page, and then another page, and then another page, and another page. So now you see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And I can double click on this one, double click, come on. Now you're gonna notice it starts with this. Remember before I was saying I'm gonna show you what facing pages are? That's what facing pages are. They're basically, it means that they're going to put the pages next to each other. Because typically, right, if you had a book or whatever, a multi-page document, it's going to start with a single page, and then you would open it up, and then every subsequent page is going to look like this, right? You're going to, when you have it open, this is the way you would see it. So there's kind of a nice advantage there. And that's what this allows you to do. All right. There is a way to actually have these master pages where basically if you put something on here, it will autofill to the rest of the pages. We're going to do that in a later class, actually probably next class. I'm not going to do that now, but that's what this is. But basically, this allows you to go to each one of your pages. So when you're in Photoshop, obviously, we're working on one document. This is almost like I'm able to work on multiple documents at the same time. That's the idea behind it, okay? So I am just going to hold shift and click on one, hold shift, click, and then I'm just going to trash these. So I just have the one, because I'm just going to do one magazine ad. I'm not looking to do a bunch of multi-page stuff. Like I said, we're going to do a little bit of that in the next class. This is just going to get kind of our feet wet, all right? So I don't see a layers panel in here. So I want to use my layers panel, so I'm just going to go to Window, Layers, and then there's my layers. I would like to have it over, don't want to snap it into there. Yeah, because I'm not really going to use these too much. So I'm going to take the layers, and I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm just going to drop it into here. If you can't figure it out, it's not that big of a deal. I'll put the links over here too, why not? Okay, so we're just going to click on layers. So this is a little bit different than, well, actually it's the same as in Photoshop, but when you do vector illustrations, they're different than raster images, because when you draw with a paintbrush and then I do another tool and then I do another tool, it's all on the same pixels. But naturally, whenever you draw something like so, like these are just a bunch of vector squares, okay? Don't do this, I'm just showing you. It automatically puts each one of them on like a new layer, right? So the layers kind of work like Photoshop, where you have layers, but you can have multiple like sub layers. And so that's kind of what we're going to do. I'm going to organize our magazine ad with like a background. Then we'll do images, and then we'll do text. And I'm going to do 3 layers. But each one of those layers will basically have sub layers. So in a way, you can kind of look at these layers almost like folders inside of Photoshop. Similar. So I'm just going to grab all these and trash those. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and rename this. So I'm just going to double click on it, and we'll just call this background. All right. Yeah. So you can tell this is the one I'm working on because it's got the whole thing there, and I only have the 1 layer. Let's go ahead and make the other layers too, and then we'll just so we'll double click on this one, and we'll call this one images, and then I'll make another layer, and we'll call this one text. So boom. Basically, I double click. Oops, not there. I double clicked on this green, and that made it pop up. So one of the things that is kind of useful here that you're going to notice is that it has this color green. And what that means is when I do have items, notice that this is in a green box. If I bring pictures in and things like that, all of the things on that layer, should have been red. Thought it was in that layer. There we go. All the things that are in the layers, the bounding box that we usually just see black will actually be the color of the layer that you see. So if you for some reason don't like the colors, you can actually choose different ones here. But I'm going to undo all that. Okay. Oops. Control-Shift-C. There we go. All right. So good. So we're going to go to background. And what I want to do is I just want to put a background color. So right off the bat, when you're looking at this here, it's white, right? There's nothing on the background. There's nothing that we're doing here. I want to put a solid color, okay? That'd be much more interesting. So this is our page, obviously. You can see it here. You can see the rulers up here that tell you the size. And then this is that margin, that ½ inch that we had in the setting in the before. That's what this line is. So if I had chosen to put columns in, we only did 1 column, so this is 1 column. But if we had did multiple ones, you would actually see more rulers. That's what these little lines are called. You would see more of those that would allow you to that would guide you in your design, okay? But we just have these basic ones, and that's fine. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm going to want to draw a square, okay? So if you go over here, you're going to see we have a rectangle tool, an ellipse tool, and a polygon tool. Very similar to what we did when we were in Photoshop, okay? Now, there's the rectangle tool here, and then you're also going to see this rectangle frame tool, and then again, ellipse and rectangle frame tool, this. So you're going to be like, well, what's the difference? To be rather honest, they actually do exactly the same things. The difference between them is that one is meant to lay stuff out, and the other one is meant to like be a shape. You'll see what I'm saying in a second. I want to go ahead and just use a regular rectangle, and I'm just going to go up here. Now, the nice thing is, too, I don't know if you can see this. See how it crosshairs? When I hover over something close to it, see how a little symbol comes up? That lets me know that it's going to snap. Unlike Photoshop or other programs, the positioning and everything being exact is kind of important when you're doing design, right? Because I would want everything to have the same alignment, and I want everything to be like nice and straight. This allows me to make sure that I can snap to things. So I want to go up to the very top left here. I'm just going to click and drag, and then you'll see it will try to snap, and I'll just let go. Okay. So now, if you look, I have this rectangle here, and I'm going to go to my properties. I'm going to click on the properties here, and now it's going to let me see the properties of the object. Now, if I had had that on when I first drew it, I could have changed it, but I have it selected now. So, for instance, let's say I click off. If I have nothing selected, it's just going to show me the properties of my document. But if I select that object, and this will work for everything, like if I got text, it'll show me the properties of the object that I have selected, okay? So I have it selected. What I don't want is a stroke. I'm going to click on the stroke, and I'm just going to go ahead and choose no smoking. And for the fill, I'm going to click on the fill here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and let's make a new color. So it has these pre-made ones. Basically, you can see it's CMYK, basically. I guess it's also RGB. So we're just going to go ahead and make a new one. Let's see. So I'm just going to click on this, do a color. Kind of want to do a golden broad thing. Okay, well, whatever. We'll call that color, right? Really. So you can see CMYK. Now you're going to notice that everything in this is generally more towards CMYK. And the reason for that is that when you're making stuff in here, when we're actually working in RGB because it's an emissive display. But the final output is going to be CMYK. It's going to be printed. Your printer works in CMYK, which just stands for cyan, which is like that. It's this like sky blue, magenta, which is kind of like a pinkish red, yellow, which is yellow, and then K, which actually everyone says it's black. It's actually not black. It's key plate, but key plate's always black, so it is black. So that's what CMYK stands for, and that's when you print stuff on paper, and it's not emissive. It's subtractive. So basically, it's not additive. It doesn't add on top of each other. It's actually it absorbs colors. Okay, so it's absorptive. Anyway, that's what this is going to do. So the sliders are going to be this by default. So I'm just going to kind of I just want to mute it a little bit because I feel like it's a little too. That looks kind of ugly. Yeah, whatever. It's hard to work with CMYK. I have a hard time with or easier time with RGB. So anyway, I got this color. Now that looks fine. That's acceptable, I guess. But if I want to do a gradient, which would look better, I can click on gradient. Actually, let's not do it that way. I'm going to leave it like here, so I'm just going to click off, okay? I want to put a gradient on this instead because this is kind of bland. It's just a solid color. So to do that, I'm going to go over to Le Gradient tool. Click on the gradient tool. And basically, well, the way it works is like this. If you click and do a little drag, if I do a little drag, the gradient is going to be between those 2 points. If I click and do a larger drag, you're going to see it's going to go from here to here, right? So if I go here to here, you can see it there, all right? Now, by default, it already has this black and white in there, and that ain't good, right? So that overrode what I did, but I just wanted to show you. If I wanted to make a solid color, that's how I would do it. So I'm going to go over here, and I've got this gradient. So I've got this gradient right here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add that to my swatches here, okay? So I have this little plus, and then you're going to see this gradient swatch is going to pop up here. And I'm just going to double click on that. There. And this will allow me to change it. Let me show you that again, because I kind of did that quick. Sorry. So I have it. So you can see the current color is on here. And I could have done this with the yellow. Like if I had painted yellow, I could have switched over to the swatch here and then clicked on this. Right now I'm just doing one with a gradient. The reason why this is important is, like I was saying before, it's generally good to keep your designs harmonious. And one of the ways you do that is you limit the number of colors. So typically, with the design, there are some rules that you it's somewhat ubiquitous. And what I mean by that is, generally your colors, you want to have a color scheme, and you want to limit the number of colors. So we're talking like between 2 and 3 colors should be kind of your main color scheme. So if I had text, all my text would be like this color, and the background would be one color, and then if I had like a detail thing, that would be another color, right? But I would keep it only to those couple of colors. And with text, generally you only want to use 2 fonts if you can help it. So you'd use like a heading font and then a body font. So all of your headings would be a real interesting, engaging, enticing font. And then all the body would be very basic, very legible, easy to read, clear font. So what's nice about making these swatches in here is that if I want to make other elements, like if I have another thing that's green, I will just click on that, and then that would be the green that I use for all my greens. And then I would use this cyan for that's magenta, this magenta for all of my magentas. And that way it would be consistent. And that's super important. So I used to work at Fisher-Price, and they actually had people that there was a color committee. And what they would do is they would go out, and then they would try to decide what the new colors were going to be based on like designs of cars that came out and designs of like that was in like Better Home and Gardens. All these like they would do these big charts and things and try to predict what the new color fads were going to be. And then they would use that data and then determine these are the colors we're going to use. And they actually on the network had a file of basically approved purples and approved pinks and yellows and things like that. And then when you wanted to use them in whatever you're working on, those are the colors you would use. I'm sure you probably have noticed that if you look at all of the Fisher-Price toys, that purple is the same purple in all of them. That's not by accident. That's because they specifically set it up that way. So even though like I was working on like DVD episodes, when we painted a character purple, we sampled that purple. That was the purple we used on our stuff. Because branding and that sort of stuff is very important, and it keeps the whole thing, the brand, unified, right? So I think Coke has a copyright on a red or something. Like these different big companies, they actually copyright like they make their own colors and stuff. So like it's very like crazy. Anyway, so it's good because I can make a list of my stuff here. But now that this gradient is added here, I can actually adjust it too because I don't like what it is. So if I double click on that, so I already had the gradient here. I was clicking it, right? So don't worry if it looks terrible. I'm gonna redo this anyway. And then I'm gonna click on the fill. Okay. And then I hit the plus, and that's gonna add whatever current color swatch I have, which in this case is this gradient that was on by default. It's gonna add it to this line. I'm gonna double click on it, and then I can rename this. And I'll just call this like, neutral BG color. Okay. And right now there's different types. So there's linear and radial. I'm going to choose radial. Basically, linear is what you see where it goes from light to dark and just in a straight way. Radial is going to be a circle. It'll be round. Okay. So I'm going to do radial, and then I'm just going to do this. If you click on this, it's going to give you the options for the colors up here, and then if you click on this one, it'll show you this one. Okay. So I want to do kind of a tannish thing. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm just going to pull in my yellow, maybe a little bit of orange, and just to kind of off-center it a little bit. We'll go with that. That'll be my light color. And then for my dark color, I'm going to click on this one. And you can see it's pretty kind of lame. So right now, the color stop is, again, it's giving me my swatches. I don't want to use the swatches. I'm just going to go ahead and do CMYK again so I can actually choose a specific color. Once I have my colors associated, like I have a bunch of colors I want, I can start using those over and over again. But in this case, that's not the case. So I'm just going to go ahead and, actually I got to take black off, sorry. That's why it wasn't working. We'll go like this, and it's going to go like that. And then let's take black down a little bit more. I'm going to go like that. Just a real kind of generic neutral, right? Because that's how I feel about myself. And then I'll hit OK. And now that will be the gradient that's there. And now while I'm using the gradient tool, because this one is selected, that's the gradient it's going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a baby here, and we're going to do an add, okay? So what I want to do is I just want to have a radial that kind of goes from here to here. Oh, let me show you a couple more things too, actually, with that, just so you can see some other things you can do with this. Oops. So if I wanted to kind of move this, if I wanted to shift, come on, why do you not work? There you go. If I wanted to shift this, I can kind of shift this color here. I can also add ones. So if I click in here, it will add another stop. So I can go here and like, now I want to turn blue. It's not showing up, but if I click preview, it'll show the blue, right? And if I want to get rid of it, you just click and just drag it off and it goes away. Okay, so you can add more stops, you can remove stops, you can change the midpoint. Okay. So I'm going to have the baby here, so I'm going to have kind of the color, the gradient kind of fade off into that way. So I'm going to click and, come on, click and drag up and off screen like that, right? So it's just, he's going to be here, so you won't see that kind of harsh thing. And that looks acceptable, I think, for the background. So I'm going to go to my pages, or sorry, layers, and I'm just going to go ahead and lock that layer so that I'm not dealing with that. And you can see underneath my layer, I have that rectangle that I just drew, and that is good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my images. I'm going to stop this video, though, and then we'll bring in the pictures in the next one.